Well, here we are. Welcome to Del Beccaro and Hook. I am Steve Hook. There's my partner in thought crime, Tom Del Beccaro. We remind you, you can find us at delandhook.com, delandhook.com. All the links are there, whether it's Rumble, YouTube, whether it's Patriot.tv, whether it's X American News. You can find us on all those sites, but you can find all of those sites in one convenient place, delandhook.com. Well, Tom, coming into this show, buddy, to paraphrase the line from Jaws, we're going to need a bigger show. There is just so much going on. This guy, I tell you what, Donald Trump, in just over 2 weeks, has not only turned over the apple cart, he's turned it over and kicked the apples everywhere. And these people, Democrats, the media, the far left from one end of the fruited plain to the other, and for that matter, around the globe, they can't keep up with what he's doing. It almost seems as if for 4 years, Trump sat on the sideline and said, this is what I'm going to do when I get in there. I'm going to slash their funding. I'm going to basically cut the devil's purse strings here with them. I mean, goodness, you see what Doge is doing, and they're losing their mind. Elon Musk is the next Hitler, okay? He's going after not only USAID, which of course is United States American International Development. It has nothing to do with aid. Only on the peripheries, doesn't have anything to do with aid. That's the smoke and mirrors of USAID. And now he's going after Department of Education. He's promised to go after DOD. What do you think? What do you make of this, man?
Well, focus first on the Democrats. They don't know what's going to be next, and it's yesterday's news. When I was head of the state party in California, I said, keep marching forward because it's always better to be shot in the back than in the front, right? And so he's marching so fast that they can't keep up with him, and their criticism is about yesterday's news while he's creating a new news the next day on a different subject. So it's moving so very quickly. And this is an interesting thing for the Democrats to defend this ridiculous spending and to go to court. Now, look, they're fighting for their lives because if the people know the truth about what they've been doing, it's up, right? I mean, their spending is insane. And we don't have to go through all the numbers about trans here or 80 million in condoms for Hamas, which is clearly just giving them military support, right? Which is insanity that we would do such a thing. CBO came out and said that there's something like 500 in 2024. There was like 500 billion in spending that was unauthorized because it was just carryovers that were never reauthorized. It's just completely out of control. And so, as you pointed out, the Democrats' defense is to what? To go after Elon Musk. I know you have a Trump on that.
Yeah,
Trump.
I do. And
you have a video on that very thing.
I do. And I would just say this before we go to the video. It's not working for them. Their old playbook has basically been shredded because, as you rightly point out, by the time they get to what they were bitching about for what Elon and Trump did yesterday, he's on to the new thing. Oh, you like that? Well, guess what? The Department of Education is going to go bye-bye. Let's listen to President Trump. And this is another thing that I just say this. In 19 days, President Trump has fielded more questions from more reporters than Biden did in his entire term. I mean, and that's just a fact. That's not me just throwing that out there. That's not hyperbole. That's truth. And here's an example of that. Check out Trump and the media from, a day or two ago. Go.
Mr. President, do you have a reaction to the new Time magazine cover that has Elon Musk sitting behind your Resolute desk?
No. Is Time magazine still in business? I didn't even know that. Elon is doing a great job. He's finding tremendous fraud and corruption and waste. You see it with the USAID, but you're going to see it even more so with other agencies and other parts of government. He's got a staff that's fantastic. He's wanted to be able to do this for a long time, and if everybody else knew it was existent, but I think never so much. When you look at USAID, that's a fraud. The whole thing is a fraud. Very little being put to good use. every single line that I look at in terms of events and transactions is either corrupt or ridiculous. And we're going to be doing that throughout government. And I think we're going to be very close to balancing budgets for the first time in many years. I think we're going to be very close to, in addition to monies coming in from tariffs, et cetera, et cetera. But no, he's doing a very good job. I'm very happy with it.
Will you put Elon Musk up on the podium for us to ask him some questions, Mr. President, at any point? Will you put Elon Musk up on the podium for us to ask him some questions?
Oh, sure. He's not shy. Elon's not shy.
Elon's not shy.
Elon's not shy. You got to look. Well, and the thing is, Tom, as you mentioned, we could go through the laundry list of insane spending that USAID was doing. But the one that really stuck out at me, that really kind of...
You narrowed it to one. That's pretty good.
I know, but I can bring it down to one. $500 million to promote atheism in Nepal.
Yeah.
That kind of gives away the whole deal, doesn't it? Because what they're doing is what we've always said George Soros does, undermining society, the civil society, with his open secret or open society BS crap. It's all about undermining the existing civil society in whatever country they happen to be in.
And all of those expenditures related to trans things is the same. If you're doing that in Ecuador, that's a highly Catholic country, and Peru. And so you're right. They are attempting to undermine, and the Supreme Court's going to have a handful because they're going to have so many issues to decide. And the Democrats have gone crazy. Let's put up some of these memes, hopefully side by side. We have a new thing we're going to do each week, which is our meme of the week. So why don't we start out with this one? You've probably seen this. This is from The Office. I've never actually watched The Office, so I apologize to all the people I just offended. But here it is. This is a perfect example. This is our meme of the week. And folks, if you're listening, send us in a meme, and we'll pick one from the crowd. When you're finding fraud and somebody yells stop, that's who's doing the fraud, right? I mean, could this not be? The Democrats are the one who've been pushing out this spending for the reasons you described.
Yeah.
And they're yelling the loudest.
They're yelling the loudest. And as we kind of touched on before, it's funny. Yesterday or the day before, whenever, you get Maxine Waters and a whole bunch of Democrats going to the Department of Education. And I don't know if you saw that video, but that poor guy guarding the door, he's just like going, oh, Jesus, I didn't sign up for this crap.
That's exactly the words I was thinking about in my head, and you said them.
Yeah. And so here we go. Now, they're over there making a scene, which are basically saying, don't you dare defund our fraudulent funding. And meanwhile, while they're doing that, Trump is saying, oh, by the way, Kennedy Center, you're all out. Did you see he went after the Kennedy Center, for God's sakes? He yanks, as they are kvetching about the Department of Education, or they are comparing Musk to Hitler again and again and again. He just yanked all intelligence briefings from Biden, which is basically a touche because Biden did it to him.
No, I think he was pulling those from Hunter and Jill because they're the ones who would have been reading them.
Yeah, that's a good point. They were the ones that were selling the state secrets. It's just
so. A big point for me here is the Democrats, of course, are objecting to all of this. Some of the moderate Democrats had the temerity to say that they'll join in this government efficiency, but as my recent post points out, maybe we can put that up as well. They are jumping off the bandwagon on this, and here you have this House lawmaker who ditches the Doge caucus, saying you can't see quite the bottom, but she says because Musk is blowing it up, and as you can see from my post up above, well that's. There it is, blowing things up. Well, isn't that the point?
That is the point. That is absolutely the point. And they can't take it. I never thought, this is why I said, Tom, I'm convinced that Trump was thinking I know how to defeat them, and it's cut their purse strings. Just cut them through EO, cut them because he's the head of the executive branch. All of these little agencies fall under his umbrella in the executive branch, and I wouldn't say he's taking a scalpel to him. He's taking a chainsaw to him. And now the media has resorted to saying one of Musk's Doge employees goes by big balls online. I mean, this is where they're at. They're trying to attack.
Demonization.
Yeah, and now we're finding out that some of the media organizations, whether it's Politico, New York Times, NPR, God knows who else, is getting money from USAID. I mean, wow.
To use it to write negative stories. And by the way, it is the American international development. It is not supposed to be domestic spending. Kennedy didn't envision that, but like everything else, that's the corruption that you get. And so here they are saying you shouldn't do this spending. And will that work with the American public? By the way, Steve, if you remember my prediction as the two biggest dynamics to watch in 2025, it was Doge at home and the potential fall of the mullahs in Iran. And certainly that's going on. Anyway, we have to take a break, but I'm super excited because we have a phenomenal guest in Gordon Chang talking about China coming up next on Del Beccaro and Hook. Welcome back, everybody, to Del Beccaro and Hook. I'm very excited. I know Steve is, because we have an extraordinary guest today. As you know, foreign policy is one of my first loves, and we have a world authority on China and North Korea, Gordon Chang, to talk about it today. So, Gordon, thank you so much for coming. It's great to see you.
Well, thanks very much, Tom and Steve.
So Gordon lived in China, I think, almost for the better part of 2 decades and worked there. His writings have appeared in the Wall Street Journal, the International Herald Tribune, the Far Eastern Economic Review, and on the topics of China. He's given briefings at the National Intelligence Council, the CIA, the State Department, and the Pentagon. And of course, he's testified before Congress. Private institutions, including private banks, seek out his advice, and he speaks around the country relentlessly and across the globe. So, Gordon, thanks so much for coming. We want to get right to it because we only have 25 minutes and you're worth a day or two of talking.
True.
What I want to know right off, I read the stuff on Panama religiously. I tried to get to the bottom of it, and I don't think I ever did. So can we start with what's the truth about China and the Panama Canal? And is this not the first skirmish between Trump and China? And where does that go?
The most important thing is that China can close off the Panama Canal anytime it wants. You know, this skirmish started between President Trump and President Molino over the presence of Chinese soldiers in the canal zone. I actually think that there are Chinese soldiers there, although not in uniform, and Chinese operatives. But the important thing is that because of China's presence, which is largely commercial, also infrastructure presence, China is able to control the canal zone. And that is clear when you look at all of China's points of contact. They can, for instance, use those ports at both ends of the canal, in Balboa on the Pacific side and Cristobal on the Atlantic side, to close the mouths of the canal. But also, you know, China's building, and I'll just give you an example. China's building the 4th bridge over the canal, and China could design that bridge so that it could be easily brought down. All they have to do is just do one thing, and they can block the canal for a very long time. They can ram a lock, they can sink a ship in the Gallard Cut. So Trump is right to highlight the issue. And when the Panamanian president said there is no foreign presence in the canal, he's absolutely wrong about that.
Which is remarkable. And it's not that they would just randomly do this. Would they not wait for a particular crisis and then suddenly a bridge collapse and closes that and makes the crisis worse?
Yes, Evan Ellis of the U.S. Army War College says that the first indication that we may have that China intends to use force in East Asia is an incident in the canal. And the reason is that if we felt that there was going to be a conflict or war in Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines, whatever, the Chinese would want to make sure that the U.S. Navy couldn't surge ships and submarines through the canal from the Atlantic to the Pacific. So this is something that could easily occur in the first moments or before the first moments of a conflict in East Asia.
So, folks, this is, I'm proud to own this book. Whoops, going the wrong way. Gordon's latest book. I'm also lucky enough to have a signed copy, if you can see that. So this skirmish, is this not a forebearer of the next 4 years between Trump and China? And where do you see that going?
Yeah, it is the first skirmish because remember, Marco Rubio's first foreign trip as Secretary of State wasn't to the Middle East, wasn't to Europe, wasn't to Asia. It was to our own hemisphere, to Panama and 3 other countries in Central America and 1 country in the Caribbean. And I think that is indicative of President Trump's focus on the Western Hemisphere. And really what we saw when Rubio was in Panama was that he was going after the Chinese hard. So for instance, he got the Panamanian president to announce that Panama was not going to renew its 2017 Belt and Road Memorandum with China. And President Molino actually said he might cancel the existing agreement before its expiration. That is clearly a move against China. Tammy Bruce, the State Department's spokesperson, announced before Rubio even left American soil that the trip was going to be about countering China, and not just in Panama, but in the 4 other countries.
Wow. Gordon, hi. Steve Hook here. It really is great to have you on. We're thrilled to have you. I've read your books over the years. I mentioned off air your book that came out with, goodness, probably 22, 23 years ago. The coming collapse of China seems to be happening before our very eyes now. And I think Trump has a very firm grip on what's going on. I think Trump gets a lot of negative. Oh, he talks like a sophomore or whatever. But he is very wise on what's happening over there. I got a feel for President Molina in Panama. That guy is between 2 tigers with this canal, and it can't be easy. This guy's got to be walking on eggshells. But as we look at what's going on in the Panama Canal, and all over the world, really, as far as China's sphere of influence goes, Trump really kind of put them in check a few years ago. And he seems to be doing that again. And I know that China has a lot of financial issues staring them in the face. They've got an aging population. And not only that, but they're not reproducing. Maybe this 1.2 child per family wasn't such a good idea after all. But where does they need us financially way more than we need them. Is this true?
It's absolutely true. First of all, China has an economy which isn't growing at the 5.0% pace that they claimed for last year. We don't know where China is going, but it's about 0, maybe a little bit above, maybe a little bit below. But even if it were growing at 5.0, it wouldn't be growing fast enough to pay back debt. To put this in simple terms, China is having its 2008 downturn now. In 2008, it decided not to have a downturn, so it overstimulated its economy, and it's built too much of everything. Now, Xi Jinping does not believe in consumption as the basis of the Chinese economy. When consumption, by the way, is the basis of almost every economy in the world. What he wants to do is export his way out of his crisis. And that means he has put his fate into the hands of people like one Donald John Trump, because Xi Jinping absolutely needs access to the US market. It's the world's largest. It can't be replaced in a short period of time. And Trump's tariffs, first imposed in 2018 and again this year, those have a potential of keeping Chinese goods out of the US, especially if the quote unquote trade war escalates. One other thing, Steve. People say Trump started a trade war in 2018 and he's restarting one now. That's absolutely untrue. China has been waging a trade war for decades, and the only thing that Trump did was decided that we were going to fight back. The first American president who has made that decision. So whether you like tariffs or not, we need to do something because China's been maliciously attacking our economy.
Yeah, and we know that Trump leveraged those tariffs, just even the threats of tariffs against Mexico and Canada. Within 36 hours, both of them caved. For that matter, we mentioned Panama, Molina caved, Venezuela caved. China's not going to cave, but they may be forced to, to work with Trump. I always thought that President Xi and Trump actually kind of got along a little bit. I mean, I remember his trip to Mar-a-Lago, but a commie is going to commie. What do you think? How is the leverage going to work this time around as far as these tariffs go? Because right now they're at 10%, and Trump is threatening to ramp them up. What do you think, Gordon?
Yeah, I think that Xi Jinping is too proud, and I think that he is going to continue the trade war. As you point out, when Trump threatened 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico over migration and fentanyl, both Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, and Claudia Sheinbaum, the President of Mexico, quickly came to terms in trying to address Trump's concerns. And these were concerns that previous presidents had just sort of let go and not done very much about. And so Trump's the first person to actually address these issues in a meaningful way. And that's an important first step for the United States. China is not addressing our concerns for a lot of reasons. And that means that this is not going to work out very well for Xi Jinping.
So, Gordon, I'd love you to explain from your experience. Politics over there is a little different from over here, right? Over here, we're every 2 years, and the way the president, if he's doing anything at all, is attuned to these instant politics. But over there, it's a communist system. You don't want to say no often, or you're wrong to right, because that could get you death. Right. So do you feel that Xi Jinping has a grip on the intensity of the economic crisis, or what to do about it? Because from what I've read, he's bucking what would seem to be common sense at this point on some of these issues.
Yeah, those are great points, because I don't think Xi Jinping understands the gravity of the situation in China. I mean, if he did, he wouldn't be doing what he's doing. There's a overlay on this, and that is that Xi Jinping, I think, actually is, first of all, deprived of information, but Xi Jinping is a Maoist. And his solutions for China are either Maoist in origin or they're Mao-inspired. Now, he doesn't have the power to go full Mao, but nonetheless, he's pushed China in that direction. And so when you look at Xi Jinping, you just got to scratch your head and say, what is he doing? Because it's obvious that what he's doing is aggravating China's problems. So there's a lot going on there. It's a very different system. And right now, I don't think Xi Jinping has a handle on what's occurring.
Wow. I'm wondering, Gordon, how, when we talk about the Chinese communist and the Red Scare from years ago, from Soviet Union, there was always the threat that was right there that at any minute somebody could press the red button and there go the bombs. I'm not suggesting that may happen with China, but how close, how trigger happy are these, is the CCP? Because they've got to see their sphere of influence is being whittled down. And hell, Trump's only been in office 19 days as of today. So how militaristic is this regime?
Well, China is engaged in the fastest military buildup since the Second World War, and they're stockpiling grain and other commodities. They are firing military officers who are opposed to war. They're trying to sanction-proof their regime. They're mobilizing civilians, and they're surveying the U.S. for nuclear weapon strikes, which is what that rather large object that floated over our country a year ago or 2 years ago actually was doing. It was passing over our nuclear weapon sites. So right now, we've got to be extremely concerned. Xi Jinping talks about going to war all the time. The military talks about it. The only saving grace is that there right now is, from what we can tell, and this is just guessing because the system in China is opaque and getting more opaque, but it appears that there are serious disagreements between Xi Jinping and the military. And we don't know the full extent of it, but we know that the military isn't happy with China's leader. And so we don't know where they're going. But we got to remember one other thing, and that is China, unprovoked, makes threats to use nuclear weapons against the United States, Japan, Australia, and others all the time. And that is a very dangerous sign from a regime that we do not understand.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about Taiwan. I mean, how I've been skeptical. I don't like saying this out loud. Skeptical that we would actually come to Taiwan's rescue. How could we? How would that work? It's like saying Russia would come to Cuba's rescue, is it not?
Well, we have a little bit more of, it's a little bit easier for us to rescue Taiwan than it would be for the Soviet Union or Russia to go to Cuba's aid. And it's partly because it's not just us. We have allies and friends in the region who also are pressured by China. And that gives us forward military bases there. Also, you know, the invasion of Taiwan would be extremely difficult for China. So in terms of how do we come to their rescue, I think that we can easily deter an invasion if we were to say, we will defend Taiwan. If we were to do that, the Chinese would huff and puff, but they would back off because they know that this is an extremely difficult task. Xi Jinping does not want to empower the Chinese military, which he would have to do if there were going to be an invasion of the main island. The Chinese people don't want war. The only reason why there would be a war, I think, is that, and this is a powerful reason, by the way, I think that Xi Jinping wants to create a military misadventure abroad somewhere in order to prevent other senior Communist Party leaders from challenging or even dethroning Xi Jinping. So there is a powerful internal incentive to go to war. But there are a lot of objective factors going the other way. As I said, this regime is now more opaque. We don't understand what's going on. I know less about China than I did 3-4 years ago. So I'm more concerned that we don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, Gordon. Well, we saw that President Trump met with the new Prime Minister of Japan yesterday. I have no doubt that what's going on in South Korea is very much, I'm sure they've already spoken to the State Department through Rubio, at least sent through back channels. So, yeah, we have a sphere of influence over there as well. Here's what concerns me, and I think of a lot of everyday Americans that are just watching what's happening. We saw what happened at our southern border, hundreds and hundreds of Chinese nationals flocking across that southern border. I know this is just asking you to take a wild stab at it, but how many of those people do you suspect may be operatives for the CCP, or are all of them, or a few of them, or what?
Yeah, well, there have been tens of thousands of Chinese migrants who've crossed that border recently, and the numbers are just, the increase is staggering. I think that there are at least hundreds, if not thousands, of Chinese operatives, soldiers, Ministry of State Security agents, whatever. And the reason is we've seen a change in composition of Chinese migrants. If we go back 2 or 3 years ago, the migrants coming across from China were primarily family groups. In other words, people who wanted to live in a free society. Now, 2/3 of the migrants coming across are single males of military age, traveling without family members, coming in packs of 4 to 15. And in some of those packs, U.S. Border Patrol knows that some of them are Chinese military, and they're seeing packs where every member has the identical kit, which to me is ominous. But also, in connection with this surge in Chinese males, we're also seeing increased tempo of Chinese incursions and attempted incursions into our military bases and Chinese drone overflights of our military bases. So, for instance, in September of last year, a Chinese national twice tried to get onto a U.S. nuclear weapons site. These are really signs that China is planning because they're looking at our patterns, they're searching for our vulnerabilities, and they're putting together plans to attack. So whatever the number is, Steve, this ain't good.
Yeah, no doubt.
So
I
I
mean, it's scary.
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk to you about fentanyl. Why has no president said either this stops next week or?
That to me is a mystery. And it's a mystery because we know what the Chinese are doing. We have the means to stop it. And until recently, no president, including Trump 45, took effective measures to stop fentanyl. We got to understand as a basic, this is not a bunch of Chinese criminals selling opioids to Americans. This is the Communist Party. We know that because in China's near total surveillance state, these large, well-organized, international in scope fentanyl gangs could not operate. And even some of the fentanyl producers are state-owned. The Chinese central government provides subsidies for the production of fentanyl. Chinese diplomats give cover to the gangs. Every container that leaves China is inspected by officials. The Chinese fentanyl gangs, they launder their proceeds through the Chinese state banking system. Chinese-owned TikTok promotes illicit fentanyl use. The list goes on, guys.
Wow.
And so, I mean, massive numbers of deaths of Americans, and I don't think the media, right now we're seeing with Doge that things are being uncovered and people are reacting to it. 15 years ago, I said to DC officials, if you want illegal immigration to stop, you have to put cameras at the border and show the reality of it. I don't think we show enough of the reality of why we know that fentanyl comes from China, is put together in Mexico, and results in these tens of thousands of deaths. And I just think people would react if they knew the truth.
Yes, they would. And what we need is an American president to talk about China in realistic terms. In other words, the terms that China talks about us. No American president has been willing to do that. And until that, we Americans are going to have a sugar-coated view of the Communist Party. And that puts us at risk because it means we're not going to defend ourselves. It's just as simple as that.
An evil empire speech.
We need an evil empire speech, and we need an American president, and it doesn't have to have that much rhetoric in it. All it has to do is talk about what China says about us and what China is doing, and pointing out what you, Tom, just talked about, 70 to 75,000 fentanyl deaths a year, a project of the Communist Party of China. This is just... This is unspeakable why this has not occurred in our country, why we have not had an American president willing to say that. And while I very much like President Trump, I do not like when he says Xi Jinping is a good friend of his, because Xi Jinping is not. Xi Jinping is trying to destroy the society that President Trump leads. We need to have clarity on that. And if we don't have clarity, we could very well lose our country.
Yeah. Well, he said that about China. He's also said it about North Korea. So I think that a lot of this is diplomacy talk, but I'd wager, Gordon, that you feel much better about where we stand today regarding China and North Korea, for that matter, than we did, say, 25 days ago. How much
certainly.
safer do you think we are?
Yeah, no, I think so. Because, there's a lot of back and forth about what Trump is thinking about China. But I think that some of the nice things that he says are really Jedi mind tricks and not really an indication of how he feels. But as I said, I think that the American president, whatever his last name is, needs to have a very clear conversation with the American people. So I'd like Trump to sort of knock off this Xi Jinping is my friend rhetoric, because Xi Jinping isn't, and it's misleading the American people.
So if we get in a couple minutes we have left, we could go super big picture. In my book, Lessons of the American Civilization, I talk about that empires' ability to project internationally, and I'm certainly not the first person to say this, is dependent on their economic abilities at home. China has made serious errors with regard to the population. They have actually a decline in population, I think, the last couple of years.
Last 3, yeah.
Can they recover from that, in your view?
Not in our lifetimes, Tom. Not in our lifetimes. And there's a couple of reasons. First of all, there's been the decades of indoctrination of the one-child policy that has affected the mentality of the Chinese people. Also, as China become more prosperous, fertility has declined. That's true in every society, and that's true in China itself. But the third reason is that there is pervasive gloom among the Chinese people, which is one of the reasons why we have a lot of Chinese migrants at our border, because people realize their country's moving in the wrong direction and there's no hope. And in pessimistic societies, fertility always declines. So, China, which is now 1.4 billion people, give or take 100 million or so, they will probably be anywhere between 330 million to maybe 750 million by the end of this century. China is going to suffer the worst population decline, greatest population decline in history in the absence of war or disease.
Wow. So, Gordon, we need to wrap up, but I would love for you to join me in the president calling for a stockpile, much like we do with oil, a stockpile of critical medicines instead of relying on China. I think we should have a strategic stockpile of medicines in this country, because we learned recently that the percent we get from China is insane.
It is. As Rosemary Gibson wrote in her fantastic book, China RX, China makes somewhere like 85 to 90% of pharmaceuticals and active pharmaceutical ingredients. And this is a country that has threatened to cut that off to the United States. This is just insane that we are allowing a country that calls us an enemy to control a critical product.
Yeah, and who knows, they could still ship it to us, but undermine us by making it poorly. Gordon, like I said, I could talk to you all day long and never tire of it. You're one of the few people out there that stands up for the unvarnished truth with feeling like, I don't know, that you don't have anything to lose. And politicians, of course, have a lot to lose. So we appreciate you coming on and your contribution to American civilization.
Hear, hear.
Well, thank you, Tom, and thank you, Steve. And by the way, Tom, your book is great. So I've learned a lot.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody, that's the wrap here. We'll come back and talk about the border again. Thanks so much for watching Del Beccaro and Hook.
Welcome back to Del Beccaro and Hook. It's good to have you with us. It was great to have Gordon Chang. The man is He's a national treasure as far as I'm concerned, and what a great interview that was. Remember to find us on DellAndHook.com, DellAndHook.com. If you ever wanted to say, I wish I would have seen the show from a few weeks ago, but I missed it. No, you didn't. It's at DellAndHook.com. All right, Tom, as I said at the beginning, we're going to need a bigger show. We could have done a 4-hour show today and just scratched the surface of what this president has done. I mean, at some point, we're going to have to commission a cape for Donald Trump because he really is just moving at lightning speed. One of the things that, Doge got started, what really brought Doge about and the Department of Government Efficiency was a gentleman by the name of Mike Benz. Mike Benz is a former State Department employee. He left the State Department and with his hair on fire and told everybody, you guys have no bloody idea what is happening over at USAID. And he really, really went off on it. He talked about it with Glenn Beck. He talked about it with all the big names. And he said, this is what's going on. Well, it got Elon's attention and Elon started digging into it. And here's where we're, now we see where we're at today. But let's hear, now, Mike Benz is not the most, hyper. He's not the most. Well, you'll see. He's a little bit professorial, I would say.
Understated.
What'd you say?
Understated.
But what he's saying is absolutely critical to understanding. So let's go to a clip. Here's Mike Benz. We all owe this man a debt of gratitude, by the way, folks. Here's Mike Benz sitting in with Tucker Carlson discussing what USAID is and what it is not. Go.
They want to say it's humanitarian aid, but it's clearly done so much harm in so many places. It's doing such terrible things, funding the Wuhan lab, not to mention, the whole rest of the USA Truman Show. But then they go, okay, well, it's U.S. soft power. It advances U.S. strategic interests. And so you say, oh, okay, so it's not aid? And then it becomes very schizophrenic to defend this thing because it's a labyrinth of lies. USAID's access and its reputation completely depends on its perception as being a kind of quasi-charity, even though, it's nowhere, charity is nowhere to be found. It's a U.S. foreign policy instrument. Aid isn't even in the name. I've said this many times, but it's the Agency for International Development. And when you see aid,
yes, is
your mind playing tricks on you.
Yeah, that's just it. And I'll tell you this, he's not wrong, because I've gotten in debates on my own socials with liberals coming on there and say, so let me get this straight. You want to cut aid? I'm like, no, I want to cut USAID. But earlier in that interview, and you may have heard him kind of reference it, he goes, we're living in this Truman Show created by USAID. In other words, everything you see is smoke and mirrors. And this is the problem that the Democrats have here, Tom. We're at the scene in The Wizard of Oz where Dorothy has seen the man behind the curtain. We've all seen the man behind the curtain, and now the Democrats are saying, ignore the man behind the curtain as they bitch about protecting one purse string after another, and it's not working for them, is it, man?
Well, I don't know. I think you should just drop the mic and go off the show because you're not going to get a better analogy than that. So that was pretty good. Yeah, absolutely. This is the history of government. Started out with a good idea and let it become corrupt over time. And that's where we are, right? JFK had a good thought about it, and the budgets got bigger. The people in charge of the budgets are buying things at 3, 4, 5, 10 times the price that they should. And there's U.S. International Development Fund. Some of that is actually mandated, but there's a huge discretionary budget. And who's got that discretion? Well, over the last X amount of years, it's been Democrats. And no, it doesn't help us to create the division in these countries. It's just ridiculous. It's against our interests. And you know what else is against our interest was the last 40 years of immigration. And that's taken a massive turn with Tom Homan and the border. And what's amazing to me, that again, what are you defending? Because the reality is they're hunting down criminals, right? Serious criminals, rapists, murderers. they're spending a lot of money to get him out of the country. But how much is Laken Riley's life worth? I don't know if you remember when the Democrats used to say, with respect to guns, I know you do, a single life is worth it.
Yeah,
why doesn't that apply? And so here we have Democrats, whether it's Gavin Newsom in California, the mayor of Chicago, fighting back and against Trump. But it's the indefensible, just as like it's indefensible that you're fighting back against USA. And we have a woman who's very active in Chicago politics, talking about really succinctly what this is about for them.
Chicago resident P. Ray Easley is the host of the Black Excellence Hour, and she joins me now. P. Ray, good morning to you. It's great to see you. So what do you knew this fight was coming, and here it is. What do you and other residents in Chicago think about Mayor Brandon Johnson saying he's going to shield illegal immigrants from Donald Trump's deportation plans?
We hope that Donald Trump is very serious about imprisoning those who want to stand in his way. We understand that we are in the middle of an invasion, and every single person who came across that border came with an invoice on their back for the Chicago taxpayer.
Wow. That's as succinct as you can put it. And you can play that out over every city from coast to coast, couldn't you, Tom?
When I saw that, I was like, whoa.
Yeah. Comes with an invoice. Yeah.
And the thing about it is, and this is Chicago has really been the videos coming out of these city council meetings, and we've seen this in other cities. Is what everything's there's only so much money they're spending, and they're spending it not on the locals, right? They're spending it on, and in many cases, these illegal immigrants, these gangs, instead of spending it on the locals. And the locals are fed up with it. And that is why Trump did better in New York than he had ever done before. And why Lee Zeldin did better than Republicans have been doing before when he ran for governor.
Yep.
And the same thing is going on across the country. And they remain this way, in my estimation, because it's the only game they know. They are that ideological.
Yeah. It is funny to watch because it kind of underscores the point we've been making during the show, is that Trump is moving at such lightning speed. Well, here's another problem that Democrats have. Their quote unquote voter blocks that they could always count on are starting to see, well, the man behind the curtain, aren't they? Here you've got black residents in urban areas in Chicago saying enough of this. Throw all the bums out if they have a D after their name. And it's important that we say if they have a D after their name. They are turning their ire on the Democrat Party, whether it's Chicago, whether it's New York, whether it's Memphis, wherever it is. Democrats are not having a very good run. And what they're doing is, to respond, they're saying, don't cut off our funding. Stop going. It's just not working. Exactly why Trump won. They're trying to relitigate that. Which of course is ironic, because that's what they always tried to accuse Trump of doing in 2020. And in a weird kind of way, and God works in mysterious ways, it's almost better for the country that Trump hopscotched over his second term, because I don't know that all this would be being done in 2020 it's being done now.
No chance. I agree. And it's also why the Democrats are at 31%, because they only have opposition to what he's doing. And the two big things that are in there is cutting outrageous spending and the border. So that's their opposition. They certainly have nothing positive. Now, look, as a historian, I can tell you any party that loses a presidential election takes months and months, sometimes a couple of years, to circle the wagons and have a coherent go forward message. That's not unusual. But as you pointed out earlier in the show, the problem is Trump's doing all these things at breakneck speed, and they have this old guard there being against everything for ludicrous reasons. Look at the Democrats are voting against in mass against every single nominee. Republicans never did that. And when you mix all this together, they're causing themselves even more harm, which, for guys like you and people who love freedom, that's a bad thing to do. And so I'm happy for them to stay in that corner for the foreseeable future.
I really don't know how they recover as a party. And I'm not trying to, it may sound like wishful thinking, but I just don't know how they get it back. I really don't know how they get it back. They're losing constituencies each and every day. And they're going to have to figure it out. Anyway, listen.
But before we do, I opened up a new Substack, and Dylan Hook has a new Substack. So look for me at TomDelBeccaro.com and Dylan Hook on Substack.
And don't forget DellenHook.com as well. And, of course, you can see all of our former shows and future shows for that matter. And, of course, we remind you, patriot.tv/DHED. Don't forget America X News on X. And we look forward to seeing you again. Want to thank everybody. Annie, our producer, of course, Gordon Chang. Tom, here's looking at you, buddy. We'll see you next week.
And I have no idea what we're going to talk about because it moves that fast. And one last thing, it's Saturday night and this came out. I'm rooting for truth, justice, and the Eagle way tomorrow.
Oh, boy. Here we go. Okay, we'll talk about the game when we get back. Anyway, until then, folks, thank you for joining us today. Goodbye.